Hi, in this episode, we're going to talk about how to change permissions. Permissions in Linux are defined by 3 actions that you can take when it comes to files and directories. And these actions are defined by bits so that when you go to change permissions, you can identify the new actions by enabling certain bits. Those 3 actions and those bits associated with those actions are the 4-bit for read, meaning you can open a file and you can actually see the content of that file. There's the 2-bit, which is write, meaning you can change that file. You can even delete it. Or the execute bit, which is that 1 bit allowing you to run the file if it's an executable or run commands against a directory if we're talking about a directory. So using these 3 bits, you can define new permissions for a file. Now, remember, you have to define 3 sets of numbers because there's permission sets for users, groups, and others. So you can use the chmod command, enter a new set of permissions as the mode, and identify the file that you want to change the permissions for. It can be, again, represented numerically, where in the case of 755, again, 7 being all 3 bits, 5 being just the read and execute bit, and that last 5 being, again, the read and execute bit. So numerically, you can represent these permission sets for owners, for groups, and for everyone else. You can also represent these permissions symbolically by typing U, G, or O for user, group, and other, and just add or subtract those necessary read, write, or execute bits from those specific sets. In this upcoming lab, we're going to show how to identify permissions on a file and how to change permissions so then you can actually dictate file access levels in your Linux system. Please stay tuned for the lab. In this episode, we're going to show how to change permissions for files and directories. Now, permissions are stated as 3 different actions that can be done against files or directories. The first action is read, the second action is write, and the third action is execute. Now, for files, read simply means you can open up the file and read the contents. For write, it means that you can make changes to the file. You can even delete the file. And for execute, it simply means that if the file is having a script or a program, you can execute it. So those are the permissions represented by the number 4 for read, 2 for write, and 1 for execute. So you get a total of 7 if you have all these permissions allowed. Now, there are 3 permissions and they exist on 3 levels. The first level is owner, whoever has created or owns that file. The second is group, whatever group is claiming ownership of the file. And the rest, which is denoted by others. So essentially, when representing permissions, you are having 3 numbers adding up to 7 that represent these permissions for the owner of the file, the group of the file, and everyone else. So you can see it here actually if I do ls-l for certain file. You can see that, hey, this is the user ownership, this is the group ownership, and then that is the permissions, I should say. This is the owners who own this file. All right, and those are the permissions. To change these permissions, you are going to use the chmod command. How it works is you type chmod and then you give 3 numbers, right? These 3 numbers will identify that at the owner, at the group, and the others level, which permissions are allowed. So if I set permissions like 777, this means that as the first 7, you have read, you have write, and you have execute. You have all 3 allowed for the owner. For the group, again, you have all three allowed. And for others, again, you have all three allowed. So let's set this permission just to give you an idea. And now you can see that I have enabled all the bits, the read, write, and execute bit for this file. Another way to change permissions is by actually identifying which you are adding or removing based on users, group, or others. So for users, it is a U, and I can add a plus or a minus to add or remove specific bits. So I can say for the user, I'm removing the execute bit for this file. And again, if you can see, I have removed the execute bit from the user. That U minus X is actually removing this execute bit from the user level. I can do this again for G minus X. And again, you can see now at the group level, the X is removed. And I can say, hey, G minus W as well. And I can see that, again, the right permission is also removed from the group. So these are the ways that you are going to use to modify and change permissions for files and directories. Now, keep in mind, I can do this for the files that I own, but in order to change permissions on other files, of course, you would need root privilege or use the root account. I appreciate you watching this episode. I hope you've learned something, and I'll see you in the next one.